The sky above Seoul turned dark at noon. Not from clouds or storms, but from ships. Thousands of them. They blocked the sun like a metal blanket covering the earth. Admiral Taiho stood in the United Defense Command Center, his hands behind his back. His face showed nothing. Around him, officers ran between screens and shouted numbers. But Taiho was silent. He watched the ships through the main window, counting them slowly in his mind. 3,000 warships. Each one larger than any city on Earth. The Galactic Council had arrived. Humanity had been traveling in space for only 80 years. They had small colonies on 3 moons. They had research stations on Mars, to the rest of the galaxy. Humans were babies. New, weak, unimportant. The Council ruled 200 species across the Milky Way. They had been in power for 50,000 years. No one challenged them. No one survived challenging them. A loud noise filled every radio, every television, every phone on Earth. The broadcast began. The face of High Speaker Ven appeared on every screen. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like old stone. His eyes were completely black, and when he smiled, it was the smile of someone looking at an insect. "People of Earth," Ven said. His voice was calm, almost bored. "The Galactic Council has watched your species for some time. You are young. You are primitive. We expected little from you." Taiho did not move. He listened. "However," Ven continued, "our observers have detected something troubling. You have developed dimensional fold technology. This is a violation of Galactic Law 7412. Young species are forbidden from creating such things." In the command center, officers exchanged worried looks. They knew about the technology. Everyone at the top levels knew. But how did the Council find out? Ven's smile grew wider. "The punishment for this crime is clear. Your species will undergo evolutionary correction. Your minds will be reduced. Your technology will be destroyed. You will return to what you were before you became dangerous." Across the world, people screamed. They cried. They held their children. Evolutionary correction meant the end of everything. Humanity would become animals again. Their history, their art, their love and dreams all erased. "You have 6 hours," Ven said. "Surrender your research. Accept your correction. If you do not, we will simply destroy your planet instead. We have done this 847 times before. You will be number 848. The broadcast ended. Secretary General Hana stood in the United Nations building in New York. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and gray hair. She had led humanity through 3 major crises. But nothing like this. She pressed a button and opened a channel to the Council flagship. "High Speaker Ven," she said, her voice steady. "I am Hannah, representing all of Earth. Please, let us discuss this. Our dimensional technology was created only for defense. We did not know it was forbidden. We mean no threat to the Council." Ven's laughter filled the room. It was an ugly sound. "Defense?" he said. "Little creature, you do not need defense. We decide who lives and who dies. We have decided you will not continue as you are. Your pleading changes nothing. There must be another way," Hana said. "A trial. A review. Something." "There is no trial for insects," Ven replied. 6 hours. Use them to say goodbye to your loved ones. It is more mercy than most species received." The channel closed. In Seoul, Admiral Taiho finally moved. He turned away from the window and looked at his most trusted officers. Among them was Yuna, the chief scientist. She was young for her position, only 35, but her mind was sharper than anyone Taiho had ever met. Their eyes met. Yuna nodded slightly. Just a small movement. Anyone else would have missed it. "Clear the room," Taiho said quietly. Everyone except senior staff. Officers hurried out. The doors sealed. Only 7 people remained. Taiho pressed a button on his desk. A hidden panel opened, revealing a red switch that had never been touched. Protocol 0, he said. The others knew what this meant. They had trained for it in secret for decades. But hearing the words still made their hearts beat faster. SUHO, the tactical AI specialist, began typing rapidly. Systems are ready, Admiral. The forge is online. All dimensional anchors are charged. Yuna pulled up data on her screen. Voidbreaker is at full capacity. We can deploy in under 5 minutes. Taiho nodded slowly. He thought about his daughter, who was probably watching the sky right now, scared and confused. He thought about every child on Earth, looking up at those ships and seeing death. They gave us 6 hours, he said. They think we are weak. They think we are afraid. He looked at his team. These were good people. They had kept humanity's greatest secret for 60 years. They had watched and waited while the galaxy laughed at their primitive species. Contact Secretary General Hannah, Taiho ordered. Tell her to prepare a final response to the Council. Make it diplomatic. Make it calm. Buy us 4 minutes. Suho looked up. Only 4 minutes, sir. Taiho's expression did not change, but something cold entered his eyes. Something the Galactic Council had never seen in a human before. 4 minutes is all we need, he said. The Council came here to end humanity. They will learn, very soon, that they made the last mistake of their existence. Above Earth, 3,000 warships waited. Their weapons were ready. Their crews were laughing and joking about the small planet below. They had no idea that in 4 minutes, everything they knew would end. Taiho sat down and watched the countdown begin. Deep beneath the mountains of Korea, there was a place that did not exist on any map. The workers called it the Forge. It was humanity's greatest secret, and for 60 years, not a single person had spoken of it. Yuna walked through the massive underground halls. Around her, scientists and engineers worked at stations filled with lights and strange machines. The air hummed with energy. This was where humanity had been preparing for this day. She entered the main briefing room, where Admiral Taiho waited with the Global Defense Council. Leaders from every nation appeared on screens along the walls. Their faces were pale with fear. They had just heard Ven's ultimatum. Tell them, Taiho said to Yuna. Tell them everything. Yuna stood before the screens and took a deep breath. What I am about to share has been classified at the highest level for 6 decades. Only a few hundred people on Earth know the truth. She pressed a button. Images appeared behind her: old photographs, blueprints, scientific diagrams. The Galactic Council believes we discovered dimensional fold technology 5 years ago, Yuna said. They are wrong. We discovered it 60 years ago. The leaders on the screens gasped. Some leaned forward in shock. 60 years? Asked the president of Brazil. Why did we hide this? Yuna's face became serious. Because we learned the truth about the galaxy. She showed them recordings from humanity's first contact with alien species. The early meetings had seemed friendly. But then human scientists began to notice patterns. They studied the history of the galaxy. They found records of hundreds of species that had once existed but were now gone. The Council does not help young species, Yuna explained. They destroy them. Any civilization that shows too much potential is eliminated before it can become a threat. They call it evolutionary correction. In reality, it is murder on a galactic scale. The room was silent. When we understood this, Yuna continued, our leaders made a decision. We would hide our true advancement. We would show the galaxy a primitive, struggling species. We would let them laugh at us and ignore us. And in secret, we would prepare. She showed them the forge, the massive facility that stretched for kilometers underground. She showed them the dimensional engines, the fold space fighters, the weapons that could bend reality itself. Project Voidbreaker is not just transportation technology, Una said. It is a weapon. We can fold entire regions of space into pocket dimensions. We can make things disappear from this universe completely. Not destroyed, removed. Placed somewhere else where they cannot hurt us. Admiral Taiho stepped forward. For 60 years, we trained pilots to fly through fold space. We built weapons the Council cannot imagine. We studied their technology and found it had not changed in 10,000 years. They became lazy. They never needed to improve because no one challenged them. But we will challenge them, Una added. Today, Secretary General Hana's face appeared on the largest screen. She was still in New York, maintaining the appearance of desperate diplomacy. But her eyes showed that she understood. If we use this weapon, Hana said slowly, the galaxy will know what we can do. They will fear us. Is that what we want? The question hung in the air. Taeho looked at the screens showing leaders from around the world. He thought of their cities, their people, their children playing in parks and schools. High Speaker Ven gave us a choice, Taeho said. Become animals or die. That is not a choice. That is an execution. The Council came to our home to end our existence. Not because we attacked them. Not because we threatened them. Simply because we had potential. He stepped closer to the screens. They have done this 847 times before. Entire civilizations erased because they were growing too fast. Billions of lives ended because some ancient council was afraid of competition. His voice grew harder. I will not apologize for protecting humanity. I will not beg for mercy from murderers. And I will not let monsters decide whether our children deserve to exist. The leaders were quiet. Many had tears in their eyes. Hana spoke again. Then we must do this right. We use the weapon. We win. But after, we must be better than them. We cannot become the new tyrants of the galaxy. Taiho nodded. Agreed. We do what we must to survive. Then we build something better. Una returned to the screens. The Council fleet is positioned directly above Earth. All 3,000 ships are within range of our dimensional anchors. When we activate Voidbreaker, we can fold them all at once. Every ship, every soldier, every council member. Where will they go? Asked the Japanese Prime Minister. A pocket dimension, Una answered. A small space outside normal reality. They will not die, not immediately. But they will be removed from our universe, unable to harm us or anyone else. The Russian president leaned forward. Can they escape? No, Una said simply. Not without our help. The countdown on Taiho's screen showed 3 minutes remaining until deployment. All global defense networks are linked, reported Suho from his station. Fold space fighters are ready. Squadron leader Jiho and his team are in position. In a hidden hangar, Jiho sat in his fighter. He was 30 years old, and he had trained for this moment since he was 15. His hands were steady on the controls. Around him, 11 other pilots waited in silence. They would be the first humans to strike against the Council. And if something went wrong, they would die in fold space, lost between dimensions forever. Jiho looked at a photograph attached to his control panel. It showed his younger sister, smiling in a garden. She was 12 years old. She had no idea what was about to happen. He kissed 2 fingers and touched the photograph. For Earth, he whispered. The countdown reached 2 minutes. Above the planet. High Speaker Ven sat on his throne and waited for humanity's surrender. He was already planning the celebration feast. He would never get to eat it. The first minute began. Jiho pressed the activation button. His fighter shook as the dimensional engine came to life. Reality around him bent and twisted like water in a storm. Colors that had no names filled his vision. Then, suddenly, everything went quiet. He was in fold space. Between dimensions. Neither here nor there. "Squadron, report," he said through the communication system. One by one, 11 voices answered. All pilots had made the jump safely. They existed now in a place the Council did not even know was possible. "Move to positions," Jiho ordered. "Stay invisible. Wait for my signal." The 12 fighters spread out through fold space, circling above the Council fleet like ghosts. The massive warships below had no idea they were there. The Council's sensors were looking for ships in normal space. They could not see what existed between dimensions. On the Council flagship, a junior officer looked at his screen and noticed a small energy flicker. He frowned and ran a scan. Nothing appeared. He shrugged and returned to his meal. The second minute began. Deep beneath Korea, Yuna stood before the master control panel. Her fingers moved across buttons and switches with perfect precision. Years of training had prepared her for this moment. "Dimensional anchors activating," she announced. "Locking onto all Council vessels." Across the forge, massive machines began to glow. Energy flowed through cables thicker than trees. The ground itself seemed to vibrate with power. 3,000 targets confirmed, Suho reported from his station. "All ships are within range. The flagship is at the center of our grid." Yuna watched the numbers climb on her screen. Anchor strength at 40%. 50%. Rising steadily. On the flagship, Ven sat on his throne and yawned. This was boring. He had done this many times before. Young species always tried to negotiate. They always begged. In the end, they always surrendered or died. Earth would be no different. Has the small planet responded yet? He asked his assistant. "Not yet, High Speaker. But there is still time on our deadline." Ven laughed. "They are probably fighting among themselves. That is what young species do. They cannot even unite against their own death." In a dark corner of the flagship, Mara the archivist stared at her ancient records with growing terror. She had found something. A warning from a species that had been destroyed 40,000 years ago. Their final message before the Council erased them. "Beware the quiet ones," the record said. "Beware those who build in shadow. They will smile while they dig your grave. You will not see the knife until it is already in your heart." Mora's hands trembled. She tried to contact the High Speaker, but his communication line was busy. He was laughing with his officers about Earth's pathetic military. The third minute began. "Dimensional anchors at full power," Yuna announced. "All targets are locked. Fold points are stable." In fold space, Jiho and his squadron saw the anchors activate. Thin lines of light appeared around each Council ship, forming a web of energy that connected them all. The Council crews saw nothing, felt nothing. They were wrapped in invisible chains and did not know it. "All fighters, prepare for phase-out," Jiho ordered. "On my command, we return to normal space to confirm the fold. Then we disappear again before they can react." His squadron moved into final positions. On the Council flagship, Commander Kira walked into the bridge. She was the Council's greatest enforcer. She had personally overseen the destruction of 12 civilizations. Her reputation made entire species surrender without a fight. She looked at the screens showing Earth. "Such a small world," she said with disgust. "Not even worth the energy to destroy." A science officer approached her. "Commander, I am detecting some unusual readings from the planet. Very faint. Probably just their primitive electronics." Kira did not even look at him. "Ignore it. These creatures cannot even build proper starships. What could they possibly do to us?" At that exact moment, Mora finally reached the bridge. She was breathing hard, clutching her ancient records. "Hi, speaker," she shouted. "You must listen. I found something in the archives." A warning about. Ven raised one hand. "Quiet. You are interrupting my wait." "But sir, the humans might be what?" Ven laughed. "Dangerous? They are children playing with sticks. In 5 more hours, they will be animals. Now leave my bridge." Mora opened her mouth to argue. She never got the chance. The 4th minute began. Admiral Taiho stood in the command center, watching the final countdown. 3, 2, 1. "Fold," he said. Yuna pressed the master switch. Reality screamed. The dimensional anchors activated at full power. Space itself bent and twisted around the Council fleet. The web of light that surrounded their ships suddenly tightened, pulling them toward points that existed nowhere. On the flagship, alarms exploded. Crew members fell as the ship shook violently. Ven grabbed his throne, his black eyes wide with shock. "What is happening?" he screamed. "Unknown energy signature," the science officer shouted. It is folding space around us. That is impossible. Only ancient species knew how to." His voice cut off. The ship was stretching. Not physically, but dimensionally. It was being pulled out of normal reality. Kira drew her weapon, but there was nothing to shoot. The enemy was not attacking them. The enemy was removing them. Mora looked at her records one last time. The warning she had found. The prophecy from a dead species. "The quiet ones," she whispered. Then the fold completed. 3,000 warships, the entire Council fleet, every weapon and soldier, all disappeared. They did not explode. They did not burn. They simply stopped existing in normal space. One moment they were there. The next moment they were gone. The sky above Earth was suddenly empty. The sun shone again on Seoul, on New York, on every city that had been covered in shadow. In fold space, Jiho and his squadron watched the fleet vanish into the pocket dimension. 12 pilots witnessed the greatest defeat in galactic history. "Targets confirmed folded," Jiho reported, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "The Council fleet is gone." He looked at the photograph of his sister one more time. She was safe. Everyone was safe. Squadron returned to base. Mission complete. Back in the command center, Taiho let out a slow breath. It was over. 4 minutes. Just 4 minutes. Yuna sat down heavily. Her hands were shaking now. She had just erased the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. The weight of it was almost too much to bear. Secretary General Hana's face appeared on the main screen. She looked exhausted but alive. "It is done," Taiho told her. Hana nodded slowly. Then she opened a broadcast channel to the entire galaxy. "This message is for all species under Council rule," she said. The Galactic Council threatened Earth with extinction. Their deadline was 6 hours. She paused, and her voice turned cold. They were 4 minutes too slow. Across the galaxy, billions of beings heard her words. Everything had changed. On a small observation station at the edge of Council space, Dral heard the news and dropped his drink. He was a Talani, a member of a species that the Council had conquered 3,000 years ago. His people served as observers, watching young civilizations and reporting to the Council. Dral had spent the last 20 years watching Earth. He had filed hundreds of reports, calling humans harmless and primitive. He had watched them struggle with basic space travel and laughed quietly at their slow progress. Now he understood. He had been watching a performance. Humanity had been acting weak while building weapons beyond imagination. Dral sat down slowly, his 3 hearts beating out of rhythm. He had been fooled. The entire galaxy had been fooled. "By the ancient stars," he whispered. "What have they done?" Across the galaxy, chaos exploded. On the planet Vorn, The slave species that served council mining operations suddenly realized their masters were gone. For the first time in 8,000 years, they were free. They danced in the streets and wept with joy. Their children would never work in the mines again. On the war world of Kreth, military commanders stared at empty screens. The council fleet that had protected them for centuries was simply gone. They had no backup, no reinforcements. They were alone on 100 different worlds. Species that had lived in fear for thousands of years looked up at the stars and wondered what would happen next. Some celebrated. The council had been cruel. They had destroyed entire civilizations for small crimes. They had kept all advanced technology for themselves, while younger species struggled with basic tools. Their rule was over, and many were happy. But many more were terrified. Within hours, emergency meetings happened across the galaxy. Leaders from dozens of species gathered to discuss the human threat. They erased the council in 4 minutes, said the Prime Minister of the Velth Confederation. 4 minutes? The council had the largest fleet in history. What stops them from doing the same to us? Asked the Queen of Rao. Today it was the council. Tomorrow it could be anyone who disagrees with them. Fear spread like fire. Coalition groups formed overnight. Species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly became allies, united by terror of humanity. On a distant planet, an elder being named Thran sat in silence. He was very old, almost 9,000 years. He remembered the last species that had challenged the council. They had been called the Vorthi. They were clever and peaceful. They had tried to argue against the council's cruelty. The council destroyed their entire solar system. 12 billion Vorthi died in a single day. Thran had been young then, but he never forgot the screams. Now, for the first time in his long life, he saw something different. Humanity had not just challenged the council. They had won, and they had done it without killing anyone. Interesting, Thran whispered. They did not destroy. They removed. The council still exists somewhere. The humans chose not to kill them. This detail was lost on most species. They saw only the power. They did not see the mercy. Back on Earth, Una stood alone in a memorial garden. This was where humanity's first alien visitors had landed decades ago. The meeting had seemed so hopeful then. 2 species reaching out across the stars in friendship. Now she understood that those visitors had been scouts. They had come to decide if humanity was worth destroying. She sat on a bench and stared at the flowers. She had helped create the most powerful weapon in galactic history. She had used it to erase an entire fleet. Yes, they were alive in the pocket dimension. But she had still removed billions of beings from reality. Was she a hero or a monster? You are thinking too much. Una looked up. Admiral Taiho stood nearby, his hands in his pockets. I cannot stop thinking about it, she said. We changed everything today. The galaxy will never be the same. No, it will not. Taiho sat next to her. But the galaxy that existed before was built on fear and death. Maybe change is good. Una shook her head. Or maybe we just proved that violence is the only answer. Maybe we taught every species in the galaxy that power is all that matters. Taiho was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke softly. When I was young, my grandfather told me a story. A small village was surrounded by wolves. The villagers could not fight the wolves. They were too weak. So they built a wall. And behind that wall, they grew strong. When the wolves finally broke through, the villagers were ready. They did not become wolves. They became shepherds. They protected the weak. They built farms where the wolf dens had been. He looked at Una. We are not wolves. We never were. But we had to be strong enough to stop them. In New York, Secretary General Hana addressed the United Earth Assembly. The room was packed with representatives from every nation. The world was still in shock, but decisions needed to be made. "We have received messages from across the galaxy," Hana said. "Some species are celebrating. Many are afraid. They believe we will become the new council. They believe we will rule through fear." She paused and looked at the assembly. "I propose something different. We do not destroy the council permanently. We bring them back, not to restore their power, but to face justice. A trial, a real trial, where their victims can speak." Murmurs filled the room. "We show the galaxy that humanity does not rule through terror. We show them that power without mercy is what the council represented. And we are better." Admiral Taiho stood in the back of the room, listening. Part of him disagreed. The council was dangerous. Releasing them was a risk, but he looked at the faces of the assembly members. He saw hope there. He saw the belief that humanity could be more than just another tyrant. Perhaps Hana was right. Perhaps strength was not enough. Perhaps they needed to show the galaxy something new, a new way forward. The vote was called. It was not close. Humanity chose justice over vengeance. The council would face trial, and the galaxy would watch what happened next. 1 year had passed since the day humanity changed the galaxy. The new Galactic Assembly met on a space station built in neutral territory. It was designed by humans and aliens working together. The walls were made of glass so everyone could see the stars. No dark corners. No hidden rooms. Everything was open. Drawl walked through the main hall, still amazed by what he saw. Species that had been enemies for millennia now sat at the same tables. Former council slaves spoke as equals with their old masters. A year ago, this would have been impossible. He was now Earth's first alien ambassador. A strange honor for someone who had once called humans primitive. In the Great Chamber, Secretary General Hana stood at the central platform. Around her sat representatives from over 300 species. The largest gathering in galactic history. 1 year ago, she began, the Galactic Council came to Earth to end humanity. They failed. Today, we begin something new. She looked around the chamber at the thousands of faces watching her. The Earth doctrine is simple. No species will be eliminated for advancement. Progress is not a crime. It is a right. Every civilization, no matter how young, deserves the chance to grow. The chamber erupted in applause. For thousands of years, young species had lived in fear of being culled. That fear was finally over. In the front row, High Speaker Ven sat in silence. He looked smaller than before, weaker. 8 months in the pocket dimension had broken something in him. Time moved differently there. For him, it had felt like decades of isolation. Decades of silence and darkness and loneliness. He flinched whenever a human walked past him. The being who had laughed at Earth's ultimatum could no longer meet their eyes. Beside him sat Commander Kira. The enforcer who had destroyed 12 civilizations now sat with chains on her wrists. She had surrendered willingly when the council was released. The isolation had shattered her pride. She wanted to face trial. She wanted it to end. The trials had lasted 6 months. Thousands of witnesses spoke. Survivors of species that had been corrected told their stories. The galaxy listened. They learned the full horror of council rule. Ven and the other council leaders were not executed. That was not the human way. Instead, they were sentenced to watch. They would spend the rest of their lives visiting the worlds they had destroyed. They would see the graves. They would hear the names of the dead. They would remember what they had done. For beings who had seen themselves as gods, this was worse than death. After the assembly session, Jiho stood on an observation deck, looking at the stars. He was no longer just a pilot. He commanded the new joint peacekeeping fleet. Humans and aliens serving together, protecting the weak, keeping the peace. A young Velth pilot approached him nervously. "Commander Jiho, I wanted to thank you for what your people did." Jiho turned to face him. The Velth were small beings with 4 eyes and delicate wings. The council had used them as servants for centuries. "Thank me for what?" Jiho asked. "For giving us a chance." The young pilot's voice trembled. "My grandmother told me stories about the old times. Before the council came, we used to dream. We used to build beautiful things. Then the council said we were too weak to matter. They made us believe we were nothing." He looked up at Jiho with all 4 eyes shining. "Now we can dream again. Because of Earth. Because you showed us that the strong do not have to destroy the weak." Jiho thought about his sister. She was 13 now. She was learning to fly. Someday, she might pilot ships alongside beings like this young Velth. That was a future worth fighting for. "We did not give you anything," Jiho said gently. "We just removed the ones who were holding you down. The dreaming, the building, the hoping that was always yours. It was always inside you." The young pilot smiled and flew away, his wings catching the light dot in a laboratory on the space station. Yuna taught a class of young scientists from 12 different species. She was sharing the basics of dimensional physics. Not the weapons. Not yet. But the foundations. The understanding. "This technology is dangerous," she told them. "It can remove entire fleets from reality. But it can also do wonderful things. We can create pocket dimensions for storage, for research, for preservation. We can save dying stars. We can protect endangered species. The power is neutral. How we use it is what matters." A young student raised a tentacle. "Dr. Yuna, why did humanity hide this technology for so long? Why did you pretend to be weak?" Yuna considered the question carefully. "Because power shown too early is power others unite against. We knew the council would destroy us if they saw our potential. So we waited. We grew strong in silence. We prepared for the day when we would have no choice but to reveal ourselves." She looked at the eager faces around her. "But hiding is over now. We share our knowledge. We teach. We build together. That is the future humanity wants. Not to rule, but to help everyone rise." In his private office, Admiral Taiho looked at a map of the galaxy. So much had changed. So much was still changing. Dral entered and stood beside him. "The Delani Assembly voted today. They want a full alliance with Earth. My people spent 3,000 years as servants. Now they want to be partners." Taiho nodded slowly. "And the Kreth? The ones who supported the council? They are quiet, watching, waiting to see if humanity will seek revenge." "We will not," Taiho said. "Revenge creates more enemies. We want fewer." Dral hesitated, then asked the question that had bothered him for a year. "Admiral, why did humanity hide so long? Your people could have challenged the council decades ago. Why wait until they came to destroy you?" Taiho turned to face him. "Because we knew we were not ready. Not just in technology. In spirit. We needed time to decide what kind of species we wanted to be. If we had revealed ourselves too early, we might have become conquerors. We might have become exactly like the council." He looked back at the stars. "We waited until we knew who we were. Until we were certain that winning would not destroy our soul." That night, Secretary General Hannah stood alone on a balcony overlooking Earth. The planet hung in the darkness, blue and green and beautiful. A year ago, it had almost been destroyed. Now it was the center of a new galactic era. She thought about the future. There would be challenges. Not every species would trust humanity. Old hatreds would take generations to heal. But the foundation was built. Justice instead of fear. Partnership instead of domination. She remembered Ven's words from that terrible day. He had told humanity to pray to their primitive deities. He had expected them to beg for mercy. Hannah smiled faintly. "You do not understand us," she said quietly to the memory of that arrogant being. "You saw a small planet and assumed we were small. You saw a young species and assumed we were weak. You gave us 6 hours to accept death." She looked at the stars spreading endlessly in every direction. "We needed 4 minutes to remove you, and 1 year to build something better." She paused. "That is what humanity does. We do not pray for salvation. We build it. And now, we will teach the galaxy to build with us." The stars shone brightly, as they always had. But now, for the first time, the whole galaxy was looking at them together, not with fear, with hope.